Too many leaders lead for validation, not impact, for what they can get out of it more than what they can give to it. Hi, my name is Chris, and I'm obsessed with how leaders grow and develop, and I too have insecure moments. We all do. Glad you're here with me now on the Sight Shift podcast so you can learn how to lead for impact, not validation. Hey guys, welcome to the Sight Shift podcast. And Mark and I get to be here with you. Mark, so glad we're doing this new series.
Let's
and
do
you're
it.
joining me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Super fun. So one of the big pieces we want to make sure you're aware of before we get into the 5 stages of a vision, that's what today's episode is. Sight Shift had a new book get released, Lead for Impact. And we're trying to help you get a definition of what it means to lead well, to lead for impact. And what's the big question behind the book?
The question that continues to mess me up, wrecks me. The key question is this: are you leading for validation or are you leading for impact?
Yeah. And it just brings you to an awareness point wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. Now we're using the 3 zeitgeist fads of our time in leadership: mindfulness, empathy, and psychological safety, to contextualize the conversation, because those don't make great leaders. And if you're curious about that, you can go to leadforimpactbook.com and love to hear what you think. Give us an honest review on Amazon. So, book is out, but let's get to the focus of today's episode.
Vision,
baby. And for me, one of the things that helps me a ton is frameworks. I don't think there's any perfect mental model or framework. So I'm not one of those people that says, you have to master and memorize all these frameworks. I do try to figure out what are the most highest value ones. And if I can't find what I want to make what is going to help me. And so what we're going to run through today is the 5 stages of a vision. And I think just at a high level, introducing this, and you didn't even know this was coming, you heard a more in-depth version of this content. And we'll share about how you can get access to that in a format. But before we even get into that, what would make someone want to listen to today's episode? What would their takeaway be? What would they get out of this?
Yeah. Well, I suspect the right context is to be in a situation where you're going after something. You can see something that doesn't yet exist for you or for anybody else, and you're going after it. Or you're on the cusp and you're considering going after it, and what that might look like. Maybe you haven't made the decision yet, but something is stirring in you. I think the conversation, the framework today can be helpful to categorize what to expect, and then also give you kind of a sense of a map. These are the seasons in accomplishing the vision that you're going to go through, so that you can see them coming ahead of time. And have a sense for, this is, maybe I'm saying the same thing, just a couple different ways. Have a sense for, this is what to expect, to recognize when it happens, and then just have some ideas on how to move past it, how to keep going and not just shut down because you hit one of these stages that universally happens when people are going after something, AKA a vision.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's an orientation, because if you're going to try to do something, change something, and you can apply this personally, professionally, however, small change in your personal life, you need to build a new health routine, big vision, you got a $2 billion organization and you're turning that aircraft carrier around, wherever you find yourself, what this will help you do is just orient real quick, because vision's all about momentum, and we've got to move that momentum from one stage to the next. What for you, as you kind of look at going through the content, what for you maybe was a surprise that you took away? There may be nothing, but what was something I didn't expect to learn that, shift that, grow into that? Anything show up for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what stands out for me is to see it in the context in which I'm living out.
Yeah.
And to recognize where I lost focus, or I fell prey to being in one of these seasons, not recognizing I was in a season, and letting some of the doubt or the criticism or the hardness. The reality is it's hard. If it were easy, anybody would do it.
Yeah.
Or it'd already be done. letting that, the hardness, the bigness, the difficulties settle in on me and create discouragement. I didn't quite realize that's what was happening in this other area until I saw it in the context of these stages, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly where I'm struggling right now. Oh, light bulb. Okay, now I can reorient, shift, and go back into this with momentum that's needed to keep this moving.
That's awesome. I think about the book, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield. He talks about this concept of resistance. Now, he's looking at it very oftentimes in the context of like personal vision. But what's so powerful and what applies here is we're going to help you understand the resistance you're going to face at every stage and then what to do about it. Because the answer isn't, I should do this right and do this well so that I don't have any resistance. Instead, it is the resistance you encounter sets you up to get to the next stage. And so what this does is it really shifts the way that you interact with what's happening. You're not trying to bring an imposed agenda on life. It better go my way, because it never does. Instead, I'm learning to see what's happening, cooperate with what's unfolding, and go, okay, this is how this is drawing out what's happening at this stage and setting me up for the next stage. So that's what we're going to guide you through, the 5 stages of a vision: personal, professional, small, big, whatever it is. Hey, test it out and see. And as we go through this at a high level, if some of you hear this and go, man, I want more on this. It sounds like that there's a lot more to this than even what they're sharing. One of our plans is to get this into our online leadership academy as a course. So for the individuals or companies we work with, this will be in there as a training, because we want you to be able to make sense of any moment and figure out, how do I move this vision forward in the midst of what's happening. So there'll be some graphics there, whether you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify. We'll figure out how to put the links in there. So nice little pretty graphics here, because if I can see it, right, it's very, very much more powerful for me to get a sense of what's going on. So let's jump in. Stage 1. And as we walk through these stages, we're going to give them just one simple word so you can make sense of it. Stage 1 is bothered. Bothered. And what's funny to me about the beginning of vision is the beginning is what disturbs you or bothers you. And so because so many people think that the aim of life is happiness versus, in America, the pursuit of happiness, which is a big difference. I want to go towards more contentment, more satisfaction, more meaning, more fulfillment, more joy, more agency, more empowerment, whatever that is. So anything in my life that needs vision, I see something that could be true that isn't yet true. It is an amazingly comforting thing to go, oh, I'm bothered by that.
Yeah.
I hear this all the time from leaders.
Yeah.
Mark, thoughts or questions, and then I want to go a little deeper on application.
Yeah. Well, I think to echo what you just said, it's affirming. It's not that there's something wrong. This is an indication, a symptom that there's something to go right.
Yeah.
Something to go fix, something that needs to be done. And again, I like what you said earlier. It could be small, it could be tiny, or it could be huge. It still applies. But the initial energy is something, you notice something that's bothering you.
Yeah.
And it can move you to making an impact.
My favorite way to interact with leaders around this is what's your 3 to 5 year horizon? What do you see out there as a vision that you're willing to sacrifice for, to pay a price for, to get to? And that's my favorite way, because that really gets the best of what we offer, our resources, how we can see them grow as much as they want. And it's something they're bothered about, right? We could be number 1 in our category, not number 3. We could be this kind of organization or this kind of vision. There's something out there. But it's also fun hopping into chats with leaders and they're like, man, my leadership team meeting went bad. Well, why? Well, I'm bothered about this. And then, without even awareness of this, they could feel negative feelings towards their team, negative feelings towards themselves. Why aren't I leading better? So they could, blame themselves or others or both. And it's like, whoa, time out. You're in stage 1 of a vision. You're bothered. You see how it can be better. And in a weird way, it does a jujitsu move on your brain, and you're like, oh, okay. This is great.
It's reframing it.
Exactly. So for me, one of the things that we want to give you are just some exercises in this as a way to make sense of the bothered stage. So I want you to find anything that bothers you, whatever it is. And if you can if you want to pause and make a list of those things now, and you want to pick the one thing you want to focus on as we go through this, but as you find something that bothers you, I want you to evaluate what bothers you. And then I want you to imagine it changed. Like, there's a lot more we could say about this, but this is the starting point. Um, if you can't see it, it's going to be very hard for you to capture the imagination of others to get there with you, or to fully capture your imagination if it's a personal vision. This makes me think of Roger Bannister in the 4-Minute Mile. You probably know where I'm headed with this. Do you want to break that down for us?
Yeah, well, it's an example often used in our context, in our space, because it's so poignant. But nobody thought that the mile could be run in under 4 minutes until somebody named Roger Bannister ran the mile in under 4 minutes. And then it showed that it was possible, and then it began to happen on a regular basis. But somebody had to do it first, and he had to see it, and then he became the one that broke that barrier.
That's awesome. I mean, it's like, you take anything you dream of in your life and you go, well, could it be true? Let me see it happening. Now, we're going to give you one little check here that's going to help you a ton. And it's just this. For a lot of people, they don't realize this. What is the beginning of how they're bothered never really transitions to something they can make better in their lives or their organization. Because what gets them bothered, then very often they get stuck in that. And here's the way I would say it. What they wish could be better is an overreaction to what is. So maybe they have a meeting that isn't run very well, and then they get frustrated, and they bring in a good meeting structure or agenda. Awesome, great start. But you can go so hard to the other side that you have this like crusading, policing energy. We can't have anything that deviates from this agenda. And then what ends up happening is this. You serve the meeting system rather than the meeting system serving you. So you can take that and apply that to personal health. You can take that and apply that to a company's vision. They don't really know who they are, but they're just saying, well, we're not that. So as you evaluate this bothered stage, you want to imagine that picture, not as a reaction, but as something that's a full, beautiful picture of this could be true. Any thoughts processing on that, Mark? Or
yeah, just one quick thought. Like in the example that you gave with the meeting agenda, that feels like it's treating a symptom without fully understanding the root cause and taking a bigger, wider view.
Yeah.
Which is what you're inviting audience, us, to zoom out and into the future, and to actually imagine, what if we had meetings that were organized, efficient, and people left feeling refreshed and energized?
Yeah, buddy.
Having an agenda is only a part of how you can get there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you get it, right? This isn't about having a meeting agenda. It's about the vision, where you're seeing something could be better. Now, I will tell you this. General population, almost everyone dips their toes in stage 1. They don't complete it. As you go to stage 2, you are in a place, from my observation, most people never get. Now, most of the people we work with do.
Sure.
But they're going to progress to the second stage, and we're going to title the second stage Prepare. So you're bothered, and you prepare. Stated very simply, what if you prepared like that vision is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
What a wild idea. What if I actually started to get ready? Now, there's a distinction here that's really huge that will serve a lot of you so well. Based on wiring, people watching and listening to this go to one of two extremes with planning. They only feel comfortable if they can try to plan every variable as much as they can. They micromanage the planning.
I can resemble that remark.
On the other extreme, there are people who resist the planning, and both happen for good and bad reasons. Both happen for good and bad motives. On the other extreme, they're like, well, if we have a plan, we're going to be locked in. We're going to be committed, And so if you look through time, you will find tons of great quotes from Eisenhower on planning. Failing to plan is planning to fail. but at the same time, the plan's going to change. Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the mouth. I'm thinking of Paul Graham, who's involved in a lot of startups, a lot of great essays on how if your planning is too constrictive, you miss the opportunities. So we're actually calling this stage prepare for a reason, because we want you to think about planning in a way as a small subset that serves your overall preparation, because it is not going to go like you think.
Right.
What's that bring to mind for you, Mark?
Yeah, it's not going to go like you think. So like, so it's charting an intended course and an ideal course, but also being willing to flex and adjust as the wind blows, as the course gets blocked, as you need to detour. So it's a both and. It's a balance of flexibility as well as some structure. And I like what you're saying. It's preparing as much as possible in all facets as if it's going to happen. And therein is the like back to what you said, so many people don't ever get to this stage because it requires a next step. It requires effort. It requires work. It requires some planning, some preparation.
Yeah.
And that means you start to own this and step forward.
I love it. And you start to root out mindset rot, like the places that you actually would sabotage, the places you wouldn't believe it could happen. I'm thinking about big and practical here. Big, I don't know why it came to mind. Bill Moyer's interview with Joseph Campbell, super famous. And he talks about this idea that it's like there's little hands helping you when you're moving along your purpose. And we would say vision in this case. When you're aligned with bringing something to bear that is true to who you are, that's not just reactive, but bothered to better, and you start preparing for it, you can't imagine all the things that are going to go wrong, all the ways you need help, or all the ways that you might serendipitously in a way you couldn't plan get help.
Right.
So this preparation mindset is like, how can I start to get all the factors aligned that I can influence? I can't influence everything. So I can actually start to prepare.
Yeah.
Something Mark and I talk a lot about, because just similar stages. He's a little bit ahead of me in this, but how do you raise your kids so that you're raising them in a way that you're preparing to launch them? I'm raising them to have a lifelong adult relationship with them. I'm not raising them to stay little, immature, and in my house.
Yep.
And so I'm bothered, right, about parenting that would keep it stuck at any stage. How am I at 7 having a blast with them, playing with them, but also parenting them in a way that I'm preparing to launch them out?
Yeah.
So when you have that vision and it's shaping your intentions, did all the parenting that you did go just as you planned? Anybody that tells you that, don't buy anything they sell.
Right. Right.
Because it just doesn't go that way.
Yeah.
Thoughts or questions?
I love how we often come back to the parenting example. And there may be this sense of separation of powers, personal, professional, but the reality is the parenting example can be such a fruitful example, experience to mine for wisdom and insight when it comes to leading ourselves and leading others. Back to the question from this book, right? The key question: am I parenting for my own validation or for impact? Am I leading this meeting for validation, impact? I know I'm getting kind of off topic here, but if this doesn't work at home, it doesn't work at work. I'm convinced of that.
Yeah.
And so part of having a vision for the home, part of having a vision for the work is doing preparation.
Well, it's funny because this comes up all the time in just coaching, consulting with leaders. 90% of what a leader would do that's the right action to take in most situations is what would a healthy mom or dad do?
Yeah.
And if you can wear that like mentality for the organization, it's amazing. It's like the clarity, the simplicity. And so what am I going to do to prepare this organization for its next stage of growth?
Yep.
I can't, depending on whatever your role is, and my role for Site Shift, I can't watch all the variables like I could 2 years ago. If I keep trying to micromanage and control, then what's going to happen? Leaders aren't going to be built. And every leader everywhere that really has an organization that they care about and is trying to build a team, they initially think, well, I could do this better than them, but you can't if you hire smarter people than you. They're going to maybe drop some balls on things, but they're catching and seeing things and furthering things that you would have missed.
Mm.
So it's this idea that just says, in a healthy way, I'm going to prepare for my organization to build and develop leaders who develop leaders. What does it look like for me to start interacting with them that way?
Yep.
And if you do that, if you move from bothered to prepare, here's a little question that can help you. Don't ask, can I blank, whatever the vision is, but instead this, how can I prepare for blank the vision to happen? Don't ask, can we get to that level? Can we have those leaders? Can I make this change in my life? Ask, how can I prepare for it to happen? And this roots out that mindset rot and gets you ready for stage 3. And we know a severe breakaway happens here. Very few will get to stage 3, which is where we execute. So we get bothered, we prepare, we execute. This is where you start to put in motion the elements that you've been assembling together. You got to do. You got to do. And at every level in my life, when I have to do the next thing, there's a little bit of that. You're sitting at the computer before you send the texts, before you go to the meeting. Yeah, right?
The blank page.
What's the feeling in that moment?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of all of the books that have just not been written. Someone was bothered by something and actually did the preparation, did the research, may even have a good initial draft of a manuscript, and yet to take that next step to actually turn it into something, like there's resistance there, a lot of resistance there.
Man, so much. I know for me, there are times where I've just had to like stare the moment in the face and go, you know what? I'm 49% afraid, but I'm 51% courage. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send that first text. I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to go to that thing. I'm going to do that. Whatever it is for you, you know. I feel like for me, health is a little bit of a moving target. Like what works for a few years then doesn't work again. And I'll say this just as a way of public accountability. You know, I love running and ran for a long time and wasn't able to run, some injuries. And finally Sunday, I was like, all right, you just got to do it. It's not going to happen. You know, I tried to prepare, do the stuff. I could see it, but then it's the execution.
Yep.
You just do it.
Yeah.
And it's that little impetus that you're getting over that hump. And it's not easy. And anybody that would tell you that it's easy, either A, has so developed the muscle and they're just not currently tackling new frontiers, right? Which is fine. You don't have to force new frontiers. Let them emerge.
They've forgotten when it wasn't easy.
Bingo.
There's a different way to say it. Yeah.
Yes. Or I don't remember if I said 1 or A, but B or 2, they're not being honest.
Yeah.
You know, there's just a dishonesty there. And so there have been times that I've leaned on, all right, I'm going to over caffeinate here, put on that music, get that edge and start going. Because a lot of my work over the years has been about the making and then the, hey, I made this, will you look at it?
Yeah. Yeah. Like a book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where for you right now are you most inspired around just making sense of what does it mean for me to execute? And then we'll get into the exercise.
Yeah. I think my wiring conspires against me to believe that you can go right from bothered to prepare into an easy execute and you're in success.
Yeah.
I know that cognitively is not true, although emotionally I want it to be true. At least that's my temptation and my wiring. So here's the insight, the learning for me, that the success is done in the executing. And you know, that's kind of like maybe a Captain Obvious moment. But the success happens because of the executing, because of the doing, and in starting out, and we'll kind of get to this with the next stage. You never quite finish where you thought you were when you started out, but if you keep going, if you stay with it, because of the executing, because of the doing, you get to a better place for having gone through the execution, a better place than just what you could picture in the preparation. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's it. And that sets up really, and we didn't work this out, the exercise. So if this is a personal vision that requires no one else, but you're making a change, or it's a company vision, or it's a team vision, or it's a family vision, and you got to get other people on board with this, the exercise we're going to give you is going to help you a ton with this. You have to communicate.
Mm.
So first and foremost, you're communicating to yourself. Then if it includes others, you're communicating to others. And that is like the action point of execution. How do you communicate to yourself? How do you communicate to others? And here's the idea. What's the story? What's the answer or the solution? What's the problem, I should have said? What's the answer? What's the solution? And what's the action to take? What's the problem? What's the answer? What's the action to take? So if I'm trying to make a health change, the problem is I'm not happy that I need to buy pull-on pants now. I'm in between waist sizes. Sorry for TMI. So that's the problem. The answer is, right, because I have eating pretty dialed in. I'm just not moving enough. It's been a couple of years of just being really focused and intense. So the answer is, for me, I want to run more, right? So what's the action to take? Run.
Mm-hmm.
Don't overcomplicate it. Put your shoes on, figure it out.
Go do it.
Problem, solution, action. And what a lot of people are doing is they're running right to the solution and not really reminding themselves of the problem. So they lose that ability to self-motivate. Now, let's talk about organizations, because this is where the real payoff occurs. Ask a CEO, how did your meeting go? Great. What makes you say that? I hit all the points. Well, who knows what they heard? There's what you said, what was meant, what was heard. What this framework will do is protect you from committing the sin that so many leaders commit when they get up in front of people and they try to cast a vision. So you've been bothered and you've prepared and now you're executing. You got to get them on board and you run right in the solution. And they're hearing it for the first time. And you've thought about it 10,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked out all these concerns and questions and objections.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've got all these concerns, objections, and questions. That's going to happen. That's natural. What's going to help you take them on the journey with you is stay in that problem as long as you need to until they feel it with you. I'm not just bringing about a change. Hey, so we were work from home, and now we're going to make a change. We want you to be in the office 2 days a week. And it doesn't matter to me if, from a leader's perspective, if you're doing that for a healthy or unhealthy reason right now in this example, although that is something to consider. So here's the problem we're seeing. And you need to paint that problem out huge. It's got to feel very, very weighty. Now we're going to go into the solution. And then you're very clear. Here's the action I'm asking you to take.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to work out with your team lead coming in 2 days a week with a day of separation in between, whatever. You know, hey, new book comes out. What's the problem? What's the solution? If you meet with me in person for the next little bit, the direct action, hey, read the book. People are reaching out to a meeting. They want to meet for something. All right, read the book, right? Because that's going to help me help you go that much further. Yeah. So that call to action is like the finishing touch to this stage that requires that extra oomph of courage. This is where we're headed, and this is what we need to do.
Yeah.
Any remaining thoughts on that? We'll go to stage 4.
If so many run right to the solution, what you've done is put bookends around the solution. Mm-hmm. First, restate the problem.
Yeah.
In a way that people understand it and feel it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then restate the action. Don't just assume that people understand that your solution translates into action, or the solution I have in my head doesn't automatically cause me to, get up and run, right? Yeah. Like it's got to translate to action.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that, because it allows me to offer this distinction. You're stating the problem relevant to them, not to you. Like a servant-hearted leader isn't trying to solve the problem for themselves, but you will reveal that you are not a servant-hearted leader when you get up and say, here's the problem I'm having, not relevant to their world or the problem they're having. Yeah. And the work from home is kind of a good example of that. Yeah. Here's the problem I'm having. I'm not sure if you're doing your job.
Right.
Well, that's your problem. That's a systems issue. That's a heart issue. That's all kinds of things. Now, it might be that you can measure engagement and that collaboration is down and co-creation is down and all the thing, office connections that happen. And I know I'm picking an issue that people intentionally go strong on one
Sure.
way or another.
Yeah.
I don't ever interact with somebody that's like, oh, I'm pro hybrid. Almost everybody's like, I'm pro office, I'm pro home. So yeah, do with that what you will. Stage four. You say, well, Chris, stage four, like I've done the work. We've put it out there. We've called to action. We've executed. Yeah. And here's what happens. Rubber meets the road. Stage four is called focus. Focus. Because it's not going to go like you think. There's going to be these unexpected problems. There's going to be unexpected critiques from others. There's going to be challenges that you didn't anticipate. Do you know of Quibi? We've talked about this, right?
We have talked about this.
I brought it up with somebody and they didn't know about it the other day.
Yeah.
They were like, what's Quibi? And I was like, dude, you need to go look it up. Do you remember enough to tell us, or you want me to?
I remember that it was a short segment video content platform.
Yeah, portrait mode.
That was going to revolutionize. It was going to be the new thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it met its demise, but now nobody knows about it, and it's not the new thing, and it's gone.
Boom. They spent like $1 billion or $2 billion. Does it really matter? Hired all the best talent, but nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it. So it's this idea of we're cooking up this perfect plan, but we weren't ready for when it meets the road because we had already invested so much. So some of you are leading out there with pure heart and pure intentions, and you're really trying to bring about a vision that makes everybody's lives better. And rubber hits the road, and then you get critique, you get pushback, you get questions, you get challenges. And then that takes you to the edge of your leadership capacity because then you get insecure. And what you do next is everything. How are you going to interact with these critiques? Are you going to become codependent and enmeshed with them in a way that you give up too much of what you really believe the vision and values are about just to try to appease, right? Or are you going to be too rigid, stubborn, and go, this is the way it is, you just need to deal with it? Make them the enemy at some level. Again, healthy parenting, right? I am instead interacting with this vision in a way that as it hits the road and I have to focus in this stage, I'm going to be changed, you're going to be changed, or both. How I might be changed is I'm going to see things I haven't seen yet. Just like a friend of mine told me years ago, Chris, you haven't surveyed the world. And I was like, that's how I come off? That sucks. I need to work on that. I might be changed. I think of Enron with this example. Do you know one of Enron's, if I remember correctly, one of their values? Integrity. What you have painted on the wall doesn't matter when you're in the focus stage and the vision gets tested. And I love the book, The Smartest Guys in the Room, because it talks about they were picking out the colors on one of their private jets, number 378, I don't remember, while all the chaos was happening. And something happened for them in the innovation of an idea. As the test hit the road, values got compromised.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, too, the people we're interacting with, we change, but they change. They're going to go into some places they didn't plan on. There's some ground to hold. There's some ground to give. And none of it is about just finding a 50-50 compromise. It's just about you being in the place that you can allow things to change. And we'll get into a real clear way to define this. Mark, thoughts or reactions?
Yeah, well, I don't know that I could say it any better, but just thinking about things that will interrupt your focus, or will be criticism, circumstances, or just your own. Here's how I would say it in my experience. This is hard. Maybe I'm going to look for something that's a little bit easier, or get distracted because this is hard. It's either emotionally hard or physically hard or whatever it is. It's in those moments where you're invited to just simply refocus. And I always like how you affirm the emotion, affirm the feeling, and don't let people be hard on themselves for the feeling, for the emotion, for being in a circumstance that's hard. It's part of the deal. That's why it's number 4 on this list. It happens.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for us is, okay, it happened.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
Yeah.
Go back to a refocus.
Yeah. You have to live in the electric middle of this tension, because culture and vision advances in tension points. And so if you think oh my gosh, they lost focus or I lost focus. We did something wrong. They disengaged. I disengaged. We did something wrong. No, it's that, can we refocus? Can we re-engage? How quick can we come back to it? We all have those moments.
Mm.
And the point of developing and deepening our strength through adversity is to get better at focusing. And the only way we get better is to lose focus for a moment. It's like you get stunned backward and then you lean back into the situation. And if you lead in a way that when the critiques are coming, you try to squash them down, right? This is where this leads. Buried protests in team settings lead to coups. Now, they may be a little coup where they just vote with their feet and peace out and they're leaving. They may politically, subversively set up a siloed kingdom where they try to rule and reign with their own agenda. Anything like this can happen. Now, if you're leading good people with good character that care about you, they're going to risk honesty. And if you don't acknowledge and honor that honesty, that you're not threatened by what they're saying or feeling, you're not going to get that repeated action from them. And the healthiest leaders know this. I want to know what they would complain about at home in this meeting so we can either A, fix it, there's an issue that needs to be addressed, or B, I need to help them understand why we're doing it this way. And we need to have a deeper conversation. And it may be that we can't agree, but a healthy team will say, we'll agree to disagree and go on, in a unified way. If you're leading in a way that you're so open-ended in the meetings that, however you feel, this is all about you just venting this out, and I just need to let you express the emotion you need so you'll feel better, and then you'll stay bought in one more day, and then I'll try to bandage up this moment with a big word salad, that also is dysfunctional. And of course, anybody listening to this is like, are they reading our emails?
Right.
We see these scenarios all the time. We know. So before I get into the exercise, any thoughts, questions to add?
You're making me think of a couple things. I'll share just one. I was golfing the other day with a friend, and we were talking about the difference between just hacks, amateurs like us that go out for hobby, and the elite players. And we don't see it, but we don't see it regularly because TV doesn't show it. But elite players make mistakes all the time. The difference is they don't get distracted or they don't lose focus from that circumstance. It's not as if they got up to the ball and intended to hook one into the fairway next door. They just recover faster. The hacks like us may stew on that for multiple holes or for the entire rest of the round.
Yeah.
But the elite players can let that go and be back in game shape with the next shot so that they can give the shot what it needs to recover.
Yeah. There's a saying in golf, you're 2 shots from going crazy.
Yeah.
Average player. So you're making me think about one of my favorite sentences from a book called The Art of Learning with Josh Waitzkin. The elite, I don't know if he says that, but the idea is they use mistakes for propulsion. So it's not only like how quick you come back to center, how quick you get that game mentality back on, locked in. This is a dumb example to use, but my daughter and I play a video game together. She's like, you locked in? I'm locked in. But when that mistake occurs, I'm not sidelined emotionally and mentally by it. How can I use it to propel to what's next? Because there's a littering of mistakes in my past.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, here's the exercise to really ground you with this. You want to answer conflict with vision. So answer criticism, conflict as it's coming to you with vision. Now, there's deeper, more sophisticated approaches you need to bring to conflict, but we're just talking about at a high level in this stage of vision. When you get criticized for something, and you will, if it's interacting with the team and you need to process it, that's great. We're talking about more at large here. If you actually went through your health journey that you want to go through and you posted a before and after picture, you would have people hate on you on Instagram in the comments. This is going to happen. I mean, it's amazing to me how people make the comments they do. And you don't have to answer all those. But people in the larger circles of your leadership influence, when you face criticism, you answer it with vision. When you face circumstances that aren't going like you want, as this visions come out and you're in the focus stage, you adapt systems. So you answer criticisms with vision, you adapt systems for the circumstances because it never goes like you want. And then last, you apply yourself to ignore everything to finish. there's this lasering in that has to happen. Now, ignore everything. I'm not saying ignore your family. You can accomplish great vision in the world and still honor the long-term commitments you've made in a beautiful, powerful way. But I am saying this, you have to have this ability as these 75 things are coming at you to go, this is the thing that matters. And I'm going to endure the misunderstanding and the misjudgment of others. This is something I've been confronting myself with recently in a powerful way. You're as busy as you choose to be. You get to choose who you serve and who you disappoint. And that's what the focus stage is doing. It's not just happening so that the vision can happen. It's making you better. Stage 5, last stage. Now this one, we don't need to spend a ton of time on because you can just go back to the episode before this one. We did a whole episode on this one.
That's where this came from.
Because this muscle is so weak in me, but the one word we'll give to it is party. I think for the episode we did celebrate. So Mark, I'm going to hand it to you. Any thoughts or questions for us that you think is most critical from that episode that we would need to be reminded of today?
Yeah, driven, purpose-driven, accomplished people can minimize the need to just pause and celebrate the accomplishment before rushing right into the next thing. Once you get to the celebration phase, that just means this vision is accomplished. It doesn't mean the next one isn't, and the next one, and the next one, right? They're all queued up like planes trying to land. But to miss the opportunity to celebrate, have some fun, to party, and disengage, to rest, relax, all the things that we talked about last episode, that's a fail. It's a fail to skip this step and just run right into the next one if you want to move to the next one with a sense of energy and being fully at your best.
It's awesome. It's up to you as the leader to discipline the attention of the organization when you're in the celebration phase, to not run into the next thing you're bothered about. Now, it could be that you're having a big celebration, you're hanging out with somebody and you're just dreaming about what's next together, and that's fine. It's the spirit of the law on this, not the letter of the law on it. But that's on you to discipline the attention of the organization, because all the benefits we went through in the last episode, you're not going to get them. And this is a part of vision. So this is just as important as the great accomplishment for all the reasons we listed. But for an exercise standpoint, just to give you a clear direction on this, you want to make sure you have systems in place to celebrate people, processes, and outcomes in that order. We celebrate who people are. We celebrate the processes, because if we celebrate achievement over process, then we get locked in. This is what's so dysfunctional about education, on being attached to the result, not the process. And then you're not elite and you don't use the mistakes for propulsion.
Yeah.
So we celebrate people, we celebrate processes, and then we also celebrate the outcomes and the achievements, because it feels good to win. And for every public win, there were 99 failures and losses.
Yeah.
And we want to anchor those in. Any closing words for us before we go?
I love the reminder to focus on people and process before outcomes and results. The outcome and the result for success, tap glasses, we did it, we made it. It's great. But if you miss the effort and you miss the personhood and celebrating the people, and you miss the steps, the process that allowed you to get to the success, the people and the processes contributed to getting to the success, it's like half baked. You don't get the full benefit unless you focus on people and process, not just the outcomes.
And your actions will reveal what you value.
Yeah.
I don't do it perfectly, but I tend to not be good at celebrating outcomes. But if you were in meetings with me, you would see me be enthusiastic about processes. And what's the one time you've come in this office and I gave you a hug at the door? It's for something that most of you will never read that he wrote, that I saw who he is in it. So there's his personhood and the process. The outcome takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So stay on the path, keep growing, keep learning, keep getting better. There's always more for you at SightShift, SIGHT, shift.com. Look at the graphics, apply yourself to these 5 stages. Learn more. Peace. Thanks for joining me on this episode. There's always more for you at SightShift, SIGHT, shift.com, to be the leader you were meant to be.